Plus, Ultra presents The Grey Lodge. This is our Metamagic of Battlestar Galactica Reimagined series, Ark II, The Tomb of Athena. I am Jin the Ninja. Well, I retired the ninja quite a long time ago, but I'm at Wukong Reborn if you really care to follow me. I have a show called Threshold Saints, which everyone not excluding, I don't want to say excluding Vanessa because she's become such an integral part of like all the stuff that we do in the group and obviously the Grey Lodge. And she's also like just personally supportive. So I want to make sure that she feels included in that. But everyone who's pretty much associated with the Grey Lodge has come on the show and is a co host. Obviously, Solar is our spooky brother, but he is off doing not spooky things. Maybe we'll say clutch things tonight with his parents. So we'll give him his snaps. And if you want to check him out, follow him at solar_exile. He also has a Substack, which are the links are in the show notes. I'm going to let Joshua go last, but I'll give him a little introduction because Eros isn't here tonight. So Eros to Ethos, if you want to follow her on Twitter, X, or you can subscribe, of course, which is what you should do. Subscribe to her channel, Eros Up, and but also follow her on X and Twitter. And then, of course, you have my other brother, Joshua, who has I mean, you haven't changed your screen name that much, but I think that because I have I have a lot of things that I kind of keep in my mind. So to me, it seems like it's frequently changing, Josh, but you are at WB Umbrella Corp and people should follow you. You also have your own podcast work, but you also are a co-host on Threshold Saints. And I want to, before I let you introduce yourself, Josh, I want to, and Vanessa, obviously, and Crystal, I also want to shout out Crystal's joining us. I was a little surprised. I was like, fuck yeah. And so obviously, please listen to Crystal's episode on Threshold Saints, Boys Over Flowers. I think it's had over 5,000 views on YouTube. So it's a little insane to me, like our small show, my small show, whatever it is. So that's a great episode. She's an herbalist and she's become my good friend. And so thank you to everybody. And I know that our group in general was extremely excited to do Battlestar because as we laid out last week, and I encourage everybody to go listen to Arc 1. What did I call it? Josh, do you remember what I called it? It doesn't even matter. But I don't know. Anyways, the point is go listen to that one and you can then sort of hear our foundation stone, our groundwork that we laid about how it is a Gnostic and sort of very important metaphysical series. And I would personally argue whether other people agree with it or not agree with it, that's totally okay. But for me, it is an aeonic series, and it very much is about the aeon of the daughter. And I still feel 2.5 years later that we are in the aeon of the daughter. I personally believe that. Of course, everybody can believe what they will. We are a consensus-oriented space. We come in consent to these spaces. Well, it's not spaces anymore, but these lives, and we transcend space and time to sort of be together in like goodwill and good intention and good relationship. And if you listen to the show from all the way back 48 episodes ago, you will hear like how our relationships have evolved and changed. And sometimes people come and go, but honestly, the core group has stayed the same. And of course, Eros, well, with the exception of Eros, but funnily enough, she fits in so perfectly. It's almost like she's been there the entire time, in my opinion. I think Josh also agrees. And I'm sure Solar would agree too. So I just want to say that. So I really appreciate it. I'm having a blast doing this. Just a little bit of housekeeping and then I'll pass the mic. But we will be doing the last episode of Battlestar, our series on Battlestar, the Lords of Kobol, next week, next Friday, live. And we will be also we will finally finish Epiphanion Part 3. So I know that I kind of put it on the back burner, but we are going to finish that. And then after we are finished Epiphanion, we are going to be tackling book by Michael Hudson, which I never remember the name of, but it's Temple of Something. This was suggested to me by Bibliomancer Seth, who obviously has been on Threshold Saints and is a co-host on Threshold Saints as our convention. He's been on 2 episodes with Joshua at least. And then Solar read it and then was like this, and I was like, do you want to do this book? And he was like, yes, this is the book I want to do. So it makes a lot of sense. I think we're a very syncretic space. We're not, although a lot of us, including me, are more right wing leaning. I think that we are very open to incorporating new ideas, different ideas. And a lot of the people that listen to us, Seth and Ben, are, well, nobody knows who Ben is, but anyways, he'll know who he is. Have been instrumental in sort of making sure that we like are at least open to something. Well, they never push, but I think it's important for us to listen to them. And they're much younger than us and sort of have a pulse on what's going on in like the Zoomer online culture. So, or Zillennial, I know I'll get in shit for that, but Zillennial online culture. And yeah, so this was a suggestion of theirs, and I want to just make sure that they get their snaps too. And also I think that's it. Oh, so we will be also doing, and CJ is going to come. CJ is going to come on the. I don't know if it'll be in the next 2 weeks, but it'll definitely be in the next 3 or 4 weeks. So CJ obviously been on Threshold Saints twice, episode 75 and 85. He has an episode with Solar that will drop Monday. I'm not going to say the title, as is also our convention, but that will be on. It's a very tantric Buddhist heavy episode, as all of CJ's episodes are. But CJ's going to join us to do a series on speculative borderland anthropology. So we're going to discuss like the borderland magic, like we're going to talk about San Mashimon, who's from Guatemala. We'll talk about Jesus Malverde, who's from northern Mexico, and then we'll do one about Blackhawk, Father Blackhawk, who is from Wisconsin. So it is interesting that Crystal came up and is here tonight. So we will be doing that, and sort of the story. We'll trace that story of like Black Indian spiritualism and like the court of Indian saints. So I'm really everybody should check that out. Make sure you still like and subscribe. I'm still not sure if I like saying that, but we have a YouTube. It is what it is. Joshua, please introduce yourself and in any ways that you want, and plug whatever you want, and then I'm gonna let the girls do it. Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and thank you for hosting. It's always a pleasure, of course, and I appreciate all the listeners as well. Your time is appreciated. So I hope I don't say the word appreciate again. But anyway, this is one of my favorite series, and so this is one of the few things I can watch over and over again. And it's always stuck with me because as an Aries, and I find the Cylons themselves kind of interesting, how they're religious zealots and all. So it always left an impression on me, also because of all the astrology and stuff in it. So I'm really jazzed to be talking about that tonight. I've done a project recently with King of Cups, and we recorded a kind of like a dark MAGA style update, and we covered some cinema as well, namely the Odyssey, which I won't belabor here, but we really dragged it. But anyway, so got some future things in the lineup as well, but I don't want to dawdle on. So if you want to find me on the YouTube, you can look for NPC 3.14 for some of my older stuff. I've done a lot of collaborations as the branch. And then, of course, on Twitter's universe, I adopted the persona of a mad scientist named William Birkin, whom works for the Umbrella Corporation, so that I can, talk about all the World Health Organization, Economic Forum, all the stuff that's censored and stuff that I couldn't talk about elsewhere, I talk about there. So anyway, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for letting me blurb.
Well, you're most welcome. And also shout out Chris from the King of Cups channel, of course. It's been a while, but he's a friend of the Grey Lodge at least, and yeah, we fuck with that. And also want to say to Josh, like, it is kind of crazy that we've been doing this now together almost 2.5 years. It's kind of insane.
Wow. Yeah, it is hard to believe. And it's because I remember I was on vacation last year and we were doing spaces, and I was like in the middle of nowhere in the mountains, chiming in here and there.
No, I remember that too. You would call us and or like I guess because we were on Spaces, it would be like you would call in kind of, and you'd be like, "Yeah, I don't know how much I can contribute tonight, but I'm gonna listen with my friends in the car." And we'd always, and then you would always contribute at least a little, um, and or a lot sometimes. I mean, you've been a substantial part of the show. Um, I'm just laughing at something Domino is saying in the chat. But yeah, I know. I mean, this is what the show's about. It's like it's without being cheesy, and I know we're all like older millennials up in here, but the truth is it wouldn't have kept going if it wasn't for like the friendship involved in doing it. So yeah, it's kind of crazy, but it's Anna on the fucking daughter. So, let's go. Okay, sorry about that. Vanessa. Vanessa is a great friend to me, great friend to Threshold Saints, and great friend to the Grey Lodge, and also a member of the Grey Lodge, of course. And she has an Etsy store, and you should check her out on IG where she is most active. I'll let her plug all her things, but I just wanted to say, go check out Vanessa's Etsy and go check out Vanessa's IG. And if you want tie dye, like ask her. Astro Elected. But I'll let Vanessa introduce herself and her wares and let her plug.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, my name is Vanessa. Everybody knows me as Truth and Dyes. You can find me on Insta, where I am mostly, X, Facebook, and actually buy my clothing on truthanddyes.etsy.com. Or you can contact me personally if you want something Astro Elected. I will do something like that. I have a background in English literature. I have a master's degree. Kind of comes into play when we end up talking about things like this. I've been studying esotericism for a very long time, herbalism, and I was super stoked when I heard that Crystal was on because I can't see. I'm new to this thing, so I can't see that she's on. And so when you said that, I was like, yes, she's become such a great friend and a really supportive person. And but anyway, you can find me at all of those places. And as far as the show, I watched it back in '04, and knowing we were coming up to this, I watched it again. And looking at it through an esoteric lens, it is just a completely different show. And I'm honored to be here. And I thank you for the invite, Jen. And thank you guys.
Thank you so much for being here. Obviously, we had a couple spaces to fill, but even if those two baddies were actually here, which of course it is what it is. We're consensus based space. They come as they will and as they can. But even if they were here, I would want both of you to be up. And also anyone from the lodge who's listening to this. I know we had other people who were interested in the series. De Morgan, I don't think he'll ever come up, but you never know. I would like him to. Or I'm forgetting his name, his screen name, but he's like a newer addition to our lodge. He's got like a great Kino aesthetic. He does a lot of photography. I know he seemed excited that we were doing this, and I was surprised because he's kind of a cool kid on Twitter. So, if he wants to come up, I'd, love to hear from him, and anyone else who wants to come up, Cassandra, you're more than welcome. I know she's in the chat right now. She'll say, I'm too shy, but I know that's not quite true because we go a little crazy in the group chat. But speaking of going wild in the group chat, of course, I don't want to call her a den mother because she's not that old. And also, like, we're not really like, we don't have that kind of relationship, but I just mean it's like we play off each other and for the best and sometimes for the baddiest. So I'm really excited that she came up. So Domino, Crystal, obviously come up and introduce yourself in any ways that you want to. Plug your Twitter and your book so people know where they can, get some ideas for herbalism and just like it help change their life, really.
Thanks for having me on. I just saw that you guys were live and I'm sitting here doing nothing, so I thought I would come on and say hi. And also, I have never in my life seen an episode of Battlestar Galactica. I'm pretty sure that this is the John Travolta Scientology show, but that's the extent of my knowledge. And so I have no idea what you guys are talking about, just so you know.
Sorry, Crystal, go for it. I was laughing so hard.
Yeah, blah blah blah. I wrote a book a year ago about EDS. I need to update it already, but you can buy it on Amazon if you really want to support Jeff Bezos. Otherwise, you can buy it from hoeyrx.com. HOEYRX.com. And it's in their shop. And if you can't find it, I'm sorry I can't help you because you are too dumb to be helped.
I'll make sure that the Hoey link is in the show notes, as I always do.
So glad she's here.
And it's okay. You know what? Because this is what happened. And I'm not shading anyone. I'm not shading any co-host or anything, especially co-host. But you know, they do ask me to send the books, especially a specific one of them. And sometimes they don't read those books that it takes me a while. Like I have to send like emails to multiple people with attachments. I mean, I know it doesn't sound like anything, but it is like, it's something. So, it's okay that you didn't watch any Battlestar because often in the spaces or in the show, I guess now or proper show, we just kind of riff. That's kind of been our it's been our regular sort of thing. So yeah, like Quicksilver surfers. That's what we used to say. And I see. I'll have to just re-add Vanessa back up. Okay. So
Well, and I would add too that it kind of adds balance too when you have that fresh perspective.
Correct. Yeah, because Josh and I are definitely Battlestar heads, and Vanessa as well. And so, and this is what happened last week is that Solar is new to the show, and then Eros had never watched it, but because she knows so much about Platonism and the like Hellenic mythologies, she can actually fill in a lot of blanks and she can understand like what they're talking about, whereas I'm sort of lost, but I'm good at the metaphysics of the show. Like I can understand the Gnostic elements. And to respond to something Crystal said, it is not necessarily a Scientology show, although there are definitely elements of that. There's no question about that. But it is the 1978 series is very much a show about Mormonism and the Book of Mormon and Enoch 3. It's like it's undeniable. They add in some really weird elements with like aliens and shit, but the 2001 version, at least we argued as a group, or well, I argued perhaps, but I think we all sort of agree that it's a Gnostic story, and that's probably better to label it under that category rather than like any, with the specificity of a religion, because then it becomes less ideological. And also, it is a very syncretic show. It just like it has a lot of, Indian mythology from the Vedas. It has obviously the as we titled the spaces, the tomb of Athena, and the last one, which I still can't remember what I titled it. I'll look it up later. But yeah, they all have like Greek names. That was kind of the theme. Oh, I remember now. The Eye of Jupiter. Right. So the series is very much based in like the Hellenic mythology, but it doesn't live there. And so for me, I think the series is very like 20, even though like Vanessa was saying, it's from 2004 and 2001, like partly the original, I think that's what it's from, or 2003 maybe, the mini series. And so it's old. Like that's what they would say on Twitter, is the kids would laugh and say, oh, that's so old. And it is in a way, but it actually makes a lot of sense. Like, yeah, the special effects, it's not like the super kinoist of all the shows, and definitely that's why I use the art from the 1978 version, because it is a lot more kino and it's a lot it's more interesting, I think, from a art like aesthetic and an art perspective. But the series as a story, as a narrative, makes a lot of sense. And it obviously, as I said in the very beginning, it's an aeonic story. It's about the exiles of the last dregs of humanity, who have nothing in common really, who like, yeah, even in terms of race, they don't even really have that in common, because it's really divided much more by like former colony. And so they're basically, so this is for Crystal, is that this last dregs of humanity, 51,000 people, they're escaping basically a Holocaust. It is what it is. And so against these robots who've basically come to kill them. But then the robots discover that the humans and the robots are a lot more entwined. That's kind of sort of the, I guess, the overarching theme of this, of the plot of the story, is that they are entwined. Like actually they're they're not different, and they've been intermarrying for a very long time. And in fact, they've relived the story that they're playing out many, many, many times, perhaps thousands, maybe millions of times. It's a cycle of samsara. And so the way they deal with issues like reincarnation, samsara itself, scriptures, as Joshua was saying, the religious component, that is so important. And I think that's what attracts me to the series. Even before I was the as well known a wizard as I don't know, I'm really not, but we'll go with the bit tonight. And I'll just say so. Before I was quite the wizard that I am now, I didn't really have a grasp of metaphysics in the same ways that I do now. So, but I think initially it did attract me because I've always been super interested, obviously, in the comparative mythology and also the, comparative religion. I think that's, for me personally, how that has always been. That I can hear Eros in my mind being like, "Yeah, that's your Sagittarius," or I'm sure Cassandra was saying, has said it in the chat. I'm sure she has. She'll be like, "Yeah, that's such a Sagittarius trait." Like he's like he really lives up to his star sign, and I really do. So people who, decry the star sign, never decry the star sign or the sun sign, excuse me. Well, the sun is a star, right? So yeah, never decry the sun sign, because the sun sign is it is a lot of who you are. It really is. In some ways that I actually have come to appreciate the ways in which it is weighted, even though I am notorious for getting into fights and being blocked by most of astrology Twitter, thank God. I also think that there is an element of like weighting the star sign is actually more interesting, at least, but it makes metaphysical sense. And why does it make sense? And how does it relate to Battlestar, you will ask? Well, the sun is able to combust any planet if it is positioned in specific ways. So as I posit for the space and for like threshold saints, and what I personally believe is that the stars are actually higher than the planets. It's interesting because Enoch, all three books, Enoch 1, Enoch 2, Enoch 3, Book of Mormon, I'm not sure, but at least in the Enochian system, the stars are also privileged above the planets. And in the series as well, the people, the characters within the metaverse or the multiverse that is Battlestar Galactica Reimagined, they are like they liken themselves to stars, and their scriptures liken themselves also to stars. So if you follow the show in any meaningful way, you'll know that this is something that we talk about, if not every episode, many episodes, because Zoroastrianism and sort of the ways that their cosmology evolved and changed and split off into little splinters and became different things. That is kind of, at least speculatively, we'll say, is the origin for mostly what a lot of us believe. And it's just like all about view. So obviously I practice Buddhism. I don't expect anyone else to practice Dharma, but I think Dharma is really good, and I think Tantra is really cool. And obviously I love Kabbalah as well. So, and have improved a lot, as has Joshua. But okay, so what is this? What does the star stuff and all this bullshit you just talked about have to do with Battlestar? Well, as I said, if the people are stars, and you have characters like Kara Thrace, and as we discussed last week, like quite in depth, we discuss Apollo and a little bit of his dad, Captain Adama. Those three characters you could map them easily to the tree. And we did say that obviously Apollo has a Tiferatic connotation. Interestingly, Kara Thrace also has a very Tiferatic connotation. She even fits the archetype of Tiferet as a blue-haired. She has brown eyes, I believe, in the series, but I can't remember. The actress who plays her does have brown eyes, but I can't remember if they gave her blue contacts. But I want to say that she does, because then it would be like the perfect Tiferatic archetype. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, well, you need to read a little Kabbalah, because every Sephira can have an actual characteristic archetype. Doesn't mean that a person or a character or an archetype has to fit 100%. No, they just have to embody certain qualities. They don't even have to physically look like the characteristic of the Sephira. They might embody it in different ways. So I just want to say that is like both Apollo, Leodama, and Kara Thrace are Tiferatic. and like clearly Tiferatic. And Adama, I think that Joshua said that he has a Saturnian or Binah quality, and I agree with that. He does, but he also has a Geveratic quality, but it's lessened in nature. So maybe Joshua is totally right and saying like he's very Saturnian, he's very of Binah. He roots the the characters sort of into their arc, at least the military element, which would also make sense because if
Let
he
me
rules, yeah, go for it, Josh.
allow me to interject just for a moment. I have a lot of other notes, but for that matter, how does he get hurt? He gets shot, right? And that's lead. So there's your Saturnian thing as well. Another one.
That's a great note. That was literally that was literally a great note. Because who is he shot by? So we didn't really discuss this at all last episode, but he was shot by one Boomer. Boomer, as I think we laid out in the last episode, we said Boomer did not know that she was a Cylon. She was a sleeper agent. And of course, she was a sleeper agent.
And may I also,
yes, please,
just
please.
For Domino's benefit or anybody else who hasn't seen it, some of the elements that run through this series are some of the same that you may find like in Blade Runner, for instance, where there's replicants. And how do you know if they're real or not? And some of them are so good as a replicant that they don't even know they're a replicant themselves, right? And so there's that theme that goes through it. And of course, cloning is something that pops up. And then, of course, AI. And so, yeah, fracking Boomer. And of course, Adama himself is a Boomer, right? So, anyway, so one other thing is that there's another old movie called The Colossus, which is about the AI is being given too much power and then they like taking over and engaging in warfare and stuff like that. And then, of course, with the Mormon thing that you mentioned a couple times, I wondered if that was because of the Kobol, but anyway, they got a lot of prophecy and such, but also in their temples, they have a celestial room. And so for all we know, they probably got some similar sounding prophecies to what we find in the show. I didn't actually know about the Mormon angle so much, but anyway, thanks so much for letting me mention those few things. I just thought it might be an added benefit to know what some of the themes were.
Absolutely. I think it was really interesting because last week I wished you were there, not because I just wanted you there because we were going to discuss the 13 tribes, because that is the whole idea of the series, right? Is that there are the 13 tribes of Kobol. None of the tribes are actually who they say they are. This is like something that is not really discussed so much in the series, but in we'll call it extra canonical Bible, the extra canonical gospel that is Caprica, a sequel series that came much later. It is discussed. The original settlers to Sagittarian are not from it's ambiguous. So we'll leave it ambiguous, but it's hinted at strongly that the settlers to Sagittarian, Erelon, Toron, Caprica, all of the planet, all of the colonies are actually not the descendants of the colonies of which they're named after. But there is a kind of ethnocentric identity that sort of supersedes, like they do the we was kings. They say, oh, we are the chosen people. We are the descendants of the original Lords of Kobol. And so if they were really clever, maybe like take a note from young Jinskis, they would have called it the Lords of Kobol. How's that for a dad joke, Joshua?
Pretty good.
Thanks, Vanessa. I appreciate that. So Boomer shoots we'll call him Admiral Adama because AA, it makes sense. Astrum Argentum. Shout out to those guys if they're listening. I think it's cooler.
That's an interesting point to make, because when you said Battlestar, I thought, oh, I mean, of course, that seems so obvious, right? But it's right in your face. It's like, well, which star exactly is the Battlestar? Like, what's the influence here, So is there like a star that maybe the Cylons are based out of, or so. I never really paid attention to that so much. But you were
Well,
mentioning stars and planets so much.
this is a good way to sort of bring me back around to what we're actually talking about. But no, this is exactly right. So the Cylons ships are called base stars. And so they have their resurrection ships and they have their base stars, which is where the raiders and the heavy Cylons, the ones that look like machines, and also they are manned by obviously the multiple humanoid or well, they're basically human. I mean, that's basically what we find out by the end of the series. Not to spoiler alert, I guess, but it's the whole thing is like, I think that's a great question, just a great existential question for the series. Like, what is the star? Where are they going? And obviously the tomb of Athena is on the original planet Kobol. That's the whole idea, right? Is that the tomb of Athena is on the original planet Kobol. So they have to return to the planet several times. Now, this is a really important plot point because it introduces Laura Roslin, our first female president of the United Ships of the Colonies, 12 colonies of Kobol. It introduces her into her prophetess. I guess that's what she is. And so I would ask then Joshua if he feels like if there's any particular biblical prophetess that he might compare Rosalind to.
I would say yes, actually, because if you think about her as Hode being like the civilian leader, and then you look at Adama as the Gavaretic, like you said, military leader, then they're like the two legs. So you got like Netzek and Hode, both together moving. And so I'd say that would probably be a good comparison. And if that's the case, Hode would be kind of like the bride of Christ, or like the people all together as one, like the living, like you said, the 51,000 or whatever. So maybe there's a significance to that number that I never really paid attention to.
Okay, let's explore that because I think that was some really interesting K-ball.
I was going to say, I
go
can't,
for it, Vanessa. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, K-ball Josh, look at you, man. Your knowledge always impresses me. So, yeah, that was all.
No, thank you. He puts in the work, Vanessa.
He does, yeah.
he increases. He always increases in knowledge. He's really good about. That's one thing. I like Josh as a friend, obviously, but I'm going to say, like, one of the things I appreciate about him is he knew that he had to, like, it's not that he knew, and I never told him. I was like, you have to get better. He actually naturally gravitated to self-improvement in that way. So he gets his snaps and his roses for that. Josh.
Absolutely. No, I work on the K-ball myself, but where he impresses me is like he knows scripture like the back of his hand. And he will throw it out like it's nothing. So he's got both. And anyway.
Praise the Lord.
Nice job, Josh.
Don't flatter me too much or I'll get struck by a lightning bolt.
No more dad jokes. Okay, that's it.
Okay, well, let's explore that K-ball because, Rosalind as a woman, so there's a really interesting thing about her as a woman. She can't have kids. So as a woman, it would immediately position her at Netzach. Like just but from the fact of being born a woman. It's sort of your natural positionality.
Well, and she's kind of emblematic of Athena in a sense too, because
right.
I don't know if Athena had children or not.
Right. And so, yeah, she's kind of self-arising because she is an orphan, as she says, which is very interesting, actually, from a metaphysical perspective, right, Josh? And so she's like alone. She's at Netzach. She's not the mother, and she can never be the mother, as we discover. And in fact, sorry, Josh, go ahead.
Isn't she a true believer also? And that's another thing I think sets her apart from the military, is that you only had it was kind of salt and peppered throughout the military, but they were just like life and death. They didn't care about fairy tales a lot of times, right? But then you had some of the people that were citizens like her they felt like they were being compelled by the prophecy, and so
but she wasn't at first.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right. That's right. She wasn't at first.
Yeah.
I think she kind of it was a hard burden for her to take. I think she she didn't. I don't think she was as religious as the rest of her following that becomes her following. So it was hard for her to take that she was actually that leader. But once she realized that everything kind of fell in line, everything that happened to her was from the scriptures, she started to believe, and then everyone else followed in line. So
It's just like a Moadib experience in a sense, right?
yeah.
There's a Dune, like you could definitely make that. There's like I mean, maybe they're talking about similar things, right? So, but yeah, Vanessa's totally right. And I want to say that too. I'm glad Vanessa did though. But she didn't believe. She was like a sort of a Capricorn. That's what she is. So they're the most cosmopolitan of the 12 colonies. She comes from like a kind of a well-off, like upper middle class, like professional family. As she says, all her sisters were educators. That was like their thing. And they all died of ovarian cancer, which she also later on we knew her. Shout out Eros. We did shout you out quite a bit, Eros, at the very beginning. So if you didn't catch it, go listen to that. And everybody check out Eros's YouTube channel, like and subscribe to that at Eros Up. Her links are in the show notes. Of course, follow her on X, Twitter at Eros to Ethos as well. And of course, shout out Cassandra. How could I even forget my Skywife? Cassandra at Spotless Mind Tarot on IG, as well as her presence on Twitter, and which is at MOTYLESNY. She's going to murder me for saying it on a live, but please follow her and also check her out on Etsy as well as IG. She's got multiple IG for different endeavors, but she offers tarot services, and also she's a content creator. I almost forgot, but I didn't really. She does astrological videos and tarot videos. So everybody can like and subscribe to her channel as well. And I will include that link in the show notes as well. Of course, we have Frau Blocher, who is, I always say she's one of my favorite Twitter poets. She's a wonderful person. She's a good friend to my friend Sachki. And of course, so that puts us again, we're immediately in kinship because of that. So thank you so much for coming. And I know she was really excited for this series as well. I'm going to put up her comment right now. Her impending death and her mother role over the people brought her to religion. Correct. 100%. This is what opens up Netzach, right? People always are like, is Jin and the rest of these people talking about with Kobol? Well, Kobol is really a conceptual way to understand reality. So one of those ways to open up the Sephira called Netzach. I can't believe I'm doing it like so childish. I'm sure everybody's like jaw drop because usually I'm just like full on. But no, to open up Netzach, which you can also relate to Venus. They're not the same thing. Everybody in the lodge knows that I do not believe the Sephira are the same thing as the planets. I actually believe that the planets are the Klipa. I know this is very contentious sometimes, but it makes a lot of sense. And I'm not saying that the planets are evil. I'm saying the planets are actually material. That's really what I'm saying, is that the Klipa are material. The Klipa is not necessarily evil. It's just that it can trap light from our view. But if we have a non-dual view, which I've always encouraged everyone to sort of consider metaphysics, at least for this couple hours that we're together, an hour and a half or however long we go, I think that you have to recognize that, yeah, that's probably true. The planets are the minor archons. This seems to make a lot of sense. This is a lot more dharmic. This is a lot more Eastern. This is a lot more Zoroastrian. And I think that there's been a problem, and this is also why I brought up the star thing at the very beginning, because I think that what pop astrology or modern astrology gets very, very wrong is the sort of focus preference for the planets. And I actually think this heavily, heavily, heavily bleeds into a lot of contemporary magic, unfortunately. And it's not that there isn't obviously a medieval and a Hellenic and a Platonic and these like very ancient forms of astrological magic is old. It's very, very old. And of course, this is an astrotheological story. So I'm not saying we need to discard the planets, but I think we also have to understand them in a way that is the materiality, the klipa, the husk, the veil that prohibits us from seeing that diamond thunder pardes at the fifth density. So it's like Russian nesting dolls. Just think of Russian nesting dolls. I actually heard pretty famous alt-lit. I won't say who it is, but I heard a very famous alt-lit writer, yeah, actually well known, like big account and everything. And they were talking about Russian nesting dolls. And immediately on a podcast, not my podcast, on someone else's podcast. And I immediately knew what they were talking about. It's Kabbalah. That's what a great metaphor for Kabbalah is. So if you think of the largest, biggest, Matryoshka doll, right there we go, Matryoshka. I'll even put it up. The mother, right? The biggest of the mothers. She's also the most exterior of the densities. That's not bad. It just means that you're not seeing the daughter that lies within. That's basically what the Matryoshkas are, right? So there's a little baby inside. That's that's the secret. That's the Pardes layer, Diamond Thunder, awakened consciousness, born into the world. You have to be born into matter to experience the world of form. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just that we don't take extremities. We don't say all material is bad, and we need to reify the spirit as superior. Nor do we say that all matter is all that is, and we negate or deny the spirit in totality. We kind of bring those two things into synthesis in our perception. So one way to open the Sephira of Netzach, I didn't forget it, and I didn't go off on a tangent that bad. Basically, it's through faith. So you have to think of where does man start? I'm saying that Rosalind is at Netzach. Well, Josh said it because she's a woman. She's at Netzach, but she's actually not at Netzach. Why do I say that? Because she doesn't have a womb. Now, you might say, what does this have to do with anything? Well, actually, it metaphysically makes it makes a big deal difference because she cannot be the exterior mother. And it also Kabbalistically makes sense because there is an attribution of Netzach or Venus to the inferior mother. And this is exactly how Tantric astrology would also describe it. We would also say it's Durga or Chandi. And we won't get into why they are inferior mothers. And when I'm saying inferior, I'm not talking about, they're not real necessarily. I don't necessarily believe in their full realness external to me. I think it happens in a dialogical exchange of the practitioner or the believer and the deity, whatever that is externally. But they are just immanent in the world. And so they cannot also give birth to it. And they also cannot liberate from their own confines. They are not fully in their own will. They do not fully understand who they are, and they may not even understand their own name. Now, what does this have to do with our erstwhile president, Rosalind? Well, she cannot have kids, so she chose to be a teacher. And in her choosing to be a teacher, she falls in love. But unfortunately, the person she falls in love with is a married man. And why is this it's a problem for many reasons. But of course, they end up having an affair. And he then becomes a politician, of course. And so she becomes a politician, of course. So they're closer together. And she kind of says that, I didn't want to do it. And maybe that's true. And I'd love to hear what Vanessa has to say of how she thinks like Rosalind's sort of pathology or pathos or where she wants to go. But I personally saw her as a little bit bloodthirsty, a little hungry for it. Like I think she liked it. I think she got a little taste of what that really meant. And I think she presents very idealistically. But I actually don't think she is. I think she's extremely shrewd. So this would also fit very much, we talked about at the beginning, archetypes and characteristics and how they can fit into the Sephira. Well, for the Sephira of Netzach, this would be that kind of spider mother. That would make a lot of sense. And
when
so
I was thinking too, like with her name, Rosalind, that to me sounds very much like Rose. And if she doesn't have a womb that's functional per se, then the rose is that part of the flower. So you know what I mean? It almost draws my attention to that once again. So there could be some deeper meaning there that maybe you guys that know about plants.
Gosh, Rosalind Temple.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Whole Christ, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, man, totally.
And she has red hair. Now that you're saying that, Josh, about the flower, like what everybody should be doing when he's talking about the rose is you should visualize in your mind's eye, not in your mind, but in your mind's eye, you visualize the reddest rose you've ever seen, and it slowly, slowly, slowly unfolds before you. That's also Netzach. Don't get fixated on the red color. It's just part of the density. It's not the whole thing, right? Like the Matryoshka dolls. It's just one of the exterior colors that you see. It's not the fullness of what it is. Anyways, we won't get into that, but that's exactly what the characteristic for Netzach Venus would be, is that red rose. And that's a perfect plant. Obviously, Venus and Mars, Gevra and Netzach have a very deep and close relationship. And it's mediated, interestingly enough, by the Sephira that we spoke about at the very beginning, Tiferet. That's what mediates the relationship between Gevra and Netzach. So it's a very important one. Also, Yesod does it as well. So I just want to say that it's always the sun and moon together. That's how you have to remember, especially for Jins. I'm going to brand it tonight. We'll say the Grey Lodge, our style of Kobol, collectively. I think that's better. I think that you have to remember that it's always Tiferet and it's always Yesod together. The sun and the moon always together. We always used to say this. I'm sure Joshua remembers. I'm sure Vanessa remembers. It is synthesis and rectification both together. That's sort of that's the alchemical point. It should be brought into the center pillar. And it's a lot harder to do that. It's a lot harder to moderate yourself and your opinions and your beliefs and your exteriorities. It's hard because the human mind is, as we always say, infinite in its capacity. So if you have a lot of capacity, high IQ, you want inquiry into many things in the world. So what does this have to do with Kabbalah? Well, it does directly have to do with it because this is the great archetype of Hod, is that analogical thinker, that person, the Gemini. I think Eros had a tweet about this maybe last week. That was pretty big and it was pretty big and it was really well written. So she was talking about how the Gemini has this amazing power, more than all the other zodiac signs, to sort of be expansive in their inquiry, meaning that they will explore many different ideas. Now, this has its own, of course, there's its own klipas that arise from any kind of positionality on the tree. That's why I always say, like, it's not just me saying this; it's all of us, and it's also like the more traditional kind of K-ball, like the more the kinds that I like, Cordovero and even Lurius, and a lot of I like the sort of post-theistic, non-dual kind that everybody knows me for.
May I
Please, Josh, go ahead.
And mind you, all this stuff's just things that are coming to mind as we're having this conversation. So I really appreciate it because I never thought so deeply about it before. But I was thinking about the warrior class as Netzach, and then of course their citizen class here is Hod. And I was thinking too of like them as a living body, right? So I was thinking, so this is maybe how the Saturnian element unifies the two, because I mentioned in chat about the two shins even. There's like a two-part to it where I think the citizens kind of represent the flesh and the warriors the bone or something like that. And then maybe the blood is what is kind of unifying them in a biological, physical manner. Of course, and then if you look at it from an energetic principle, maybe it's faith and loyalty or whatever. But I was speculating in my mind about there are certain characters that kind of not necessarily trade or betray, but like they do move from pillar to pillar. And so where does that crossing take place? And so maybe Tipperath, because love is what sometimes sways them, right, to maybe move from one pillar to the other. And so I kind of imagine the two pillars themselves also, like Netzach being a solid stone, and then Hod being more like an aggregate, and being unified by that faith, kind of like holds it together or whatever. So anyway, those are just, and they're losing ships and stuff too throughout the series, right? So like big pieces of that aggregate are getting lost, and so what does the warrior class have to fight for if there's no citizens left? And the citizens, of course, are wholly dependent on the military. So I just think it's an interesting relationship that they both have And so thank you for letting me share that.
No, that was
Josh,
great, Josh. Sorry,
I think
Vanessa,
you
go
nailed.
for it.
Oh no, I think he nailed a lot of things. The flesh and the bone. First thing that came to mind is when Starbuck gets stranded on the island, or not island, but the planet, and she finds the silent ship, and she's trying to make it work so that she can get out because she's running out of oxygen. And once she gets into the ship, she realized that it's made of flesh and blood, and it breathes air. And so that came to mind. And then you mentioned love. And that's all the Cylons are looking for. The reason that they can't breed is because there is no love between them. And the reason that Boomer, or, her other character, is allowed to breathe with Hilo is because they share love between one another. So I think you just nailed a lot, Josh.
Yeah, both of you actually did. Like, I can just retire now. For real. No, Josh, okay, so that was really interesting because as you said, and then Vanessa tied in something that I'm going to tie in, but let me get there. So Josh said that, of course, Netzach is like a diamond. We've said this as a lodge, as a space for years, basically. Netzach is, you can liken Netzach to a diamond. It doesn't necessarily match the immediate colors that you will see in Hermetic Kabbalah, but I actually think this way of thinking about it is a lot more accurate and a lot more interesting. And I'll tell you why. Because what happens when light passes through a diamond or a crystal, a cut crystal? It refracts into light, different colors. What are colors really but the names and words assigned to light, assigned to things we see? That's very Hode like. So you have this immediate Hode, Mercury, and Netzach connection, like Josh was talking about. And interestingly, in Jyotisha, the stone of Mercury is an emerald. Green is a color of synthesis. Now, I know people will say, oh, well, what are you talking about, Jin? Because if I go Google right now a Kabbalistic tree of life, it will show Netzach as green. And I agree with that, in fact. I think that there's a reason for that. And I think it's a reason why a rose is actually multicolored. It's not singular, right? It's green, and it also has the, of course, the whatever whatever flower color it has, but it actually has an inner core, and it also has the stamen, which is usually yellow, even if it's small. So you actually have 5 colors in it. We'll just use a conventional red rose, like a what everybody thinks of as a rose in general. We can blame the floral industry. I know Crystal's probably thinking like that's not really a rose, and I agree, it's not really a rose, but for our purposes, it will say it's a rose. And so just think of that and think that there actually are multiple colors. There actually are contours, and there are actually places where they bleed together. The thorns are actually, it's kind of muddier. It's kind of actually more brown, and there's like a red green mixing that happens. And so I'm just saying that you can actually account for the world of colors, what is assigned to Netzach. You can account for that through the gemstone jade. Now, why am I bringing up jade when I said Netzach is a diamond? Netzach itself is not a diamond. Netzach is the light passing through the diamond, traveling through, we'll call it empty space, but I mean empty is in the Buddhist way. Masslessness and luminous, meaning self-illuminating. That's what Netzach really is. That's why I always say the planets are really klipas, because the planets are just there to contain the light. You don't want to contain the light because the light carries forth both the word and the sound of the mantra or the sound of the name, if you want to use a really Hebrew way to understand the tree. So basically, you use faith, as we were saying, like this was about 15 minutes ago. So just keep that in mind. We're using faith to open up Netzach. She doesn't have it, as we said, she doesn't have a womb. So she's actually traveling through the paths. Yes, our dear Rosalind is an emanation of the diamond. She is like the light passing through the diamond, traveling up the tree. She is traveling to Yesod. And why is this important? Because really, humanity is at Yesod. That's really the truth, like the Omer of it. We are at Yesod, and we are looking upwards because we ourselves, our physical bodies, we ourselves are Malkuth, or Malkuth, if you want me to be proper. So we are looking up just like humanity does. Just imagine it. Even like 80 years ago, when, something we talk about, like in a more, I wouldn't say it's necessarily a parapolitical way, but we definitely do touch on all of those things. It is like he was looking up at the stars 80 years ago and saying, can we get there? How do we get there? And it doesn't really matter if we believe like what the nature of space is. We have space that we can interact with here within our atmosphere. And that space is actually contained by air, or air is within that space, but it's invisible, so we can't see it. Well, in Tantra, air is green. I know people would be like, what? This is insane. Because you said Hode is also green. It's like an emerald. Well, Hode is not really green, but the planet Mercury is green. There's a green element. But what happens when you pass light through an emerald? And you're going to say, oh, it's going to look green. It actually only looks green a little bit. It actually looks clear. And so there's an idea in Tantra that the green, then, just like green Tara, is the remediation to all poisons. So emerald becomes a great subjugator of poisonous things. So you have this green light that we've talked about many times, having this potentiality or power to pacify the worlds, the three worlds. So you all know I'm a Buddhist. So obviously the Buddha's name is Buddha, Gautama Buddha. Buddha is a title, and it means the speaker, he who wields the word, the Bud. He can speak. He speaks, and as I said, what is the word? The word is light and sound. So if you are able to speak the words, the true words, whatever the truth may be for you, if you are able to speak those things into reality, you also make the lightning flash. You also illuminate all the Sephira on the tree if you know the right words and their proper order. So there you have Hode right there, basically what I described. And if you go look at a picture of the Buddha, you see he's wearing an orange robe, and he often has a green halo, and he's also sitting under a tree. Those are all Hode-like colors as well. Multiple colors. That's how you have to consider all the Sephira. You cannot just look at a hermetic tree, no matter how many times you repost it and say you know Kabbalah. I'm not talking about anyone in particular. I'm just giving an example of like what a fraud would look like. You have to understand the tree as being very dynamic. It's not static, but it's also not whatever you want. It has guidelines of what they can be. So, if you understand Kabbalah, like medieval Kabbalah, you will know that orange and green is the older attribution for Hode. It's often understood as a orange color with a green Pardes layer, so it makes it unique among the other Sephira, where they are considered to have a turquoise core, diamond thunder. Now, in the updated Kabbalistic ideas about post 1700s, the color gets updated and it becomes papaya, meaning pink, and turquoise, a turquoise core. It actually makes sense, but it doesn't make sense right away. Because if you think of it in an aeonic way, which is part of the reason I started talking about aeonic thinking and aeonic cycles, is because you have to understand that the tree sometimes gets changed. So this can be either good or bad, or it can be updated. And updated, I'm not talking about software or sim theory or anything, but maybe our perspective, our view, our sort of way we understand ourselves and our positionality in the multiverse, which also means the positionality on the tree. The way we are looking at the planets and the stars changes. It changes because of the narrative. It changes because of the story. So basically, you can update the Sephira as long as it's referential to both Bina, wisdom text, as well as experiential wisdom, Hokmah, itself. So you must have to have the Sephirotic understanding through the experience and through non-dual gnosis to recognize that, yes, actually papaya and turquoise is the color right now. This is the aeonic colors. And sometimes I'll say pink and lime green. So what does this have to do with Rosalind? Well, you have to understand her as the daughter because she, as I said, she can never be the mother, but she's the mother in deficiency. So she's not really the daughter either. But for this beginning part of the story's arc, she functions as the daughter. So basically, what I'm saying is that the Aeonic archetype or the Aeon itself actually can travel along with people who fit its characteristic, which also is interesting because then it passes on the story to Kara Thrace. But it takes a little bit of time, just like Joshua was saying. It's the journey from Hode to where does Hode actually like to live. The analogical thinking mind, that powerful mind that Eros talked about in her tweet, it actually needs to rest in Hesed. That's actually the correct terminus for a Hode-like mind. It's to rest in loving kindness, like Green Tara. We often talk about Green Tara. So, of course, Hesed is incomplete. So, like Joshua was saying, you would have to sort of put this kind of, well, we're a metamagical space, so let's talk a little bit about metapolitics. So, often we've discussed how you should understand sort of liberalism and liberal democratic politics as being tied, at least very currently, to Hesed. And I think this plays out with the colors of blue that we see assigned to flags and assigned to, various movements in the world, and the evil right-wing fascists, which many of us have been called, which may or may not even be true, maybe. Um, Speculatively anyway. So that is often depicted as red, right? Red and black is very frequent, but sometimes you see red and white and red and brown, all that. But red. So red and blue, you have these two factions, these fire and the water, very literally. And so what I wanted to tie in with Vanessa, I told you I was going somewhere with it. But so Vanessa mentioned that Kara Thrace was stuck on the ice planet. Well, what element can you say Netzach is? What state of being is water? Because that's the blue pillar. That's what we're talking about. Fundamentally, in alchemy, that is what we're talking about. That you are assigning the Sephira states of the nature of the world, states of the nature of being. So we're saying the blue pillar is then likened to water. So what state is the most dense of water? Of course, that is ice. Of course, you can cut a crystal from ice. Of course, you can hold the crystal or the cut ice to the sun, and you will get light passing through, which is the perfect metaphor for Kabbalah. Because what is the color of water? The color of water is actually clear, like a diamond. Because if you melt the water, it's clear. If you boil the water and it becomes steam, it's also clear. So you must also admit that ice is also clear, but you cannot tell because it actually refracts the colors of the world, which is the blue-green of the sky. So you also must say that Hesed is this blue-green. So, but it's always being reflected, or I should say, the flame of Gevra is always being reflected upon the waters of mercy. The flames of strength are always there. So if you're doing Jin's Grey Lodge's speculative Kabbalah, you'll imagine, I always like to say the ocean because the ocean is a better metaphor for it. But if you only live by a river or a lake, and I know that we have many Midwesterners amongst us, this is also, you can also imagine this in your mind's eye, is that you'll imagine on a very sunny, very clear day, the sun very strongly shining upon the waters. And the water is moving. It can't be currentless. It has to have that little flicker of the waves. And so you will see the light actually flickers across the water. So this is the interaction between Gevra and Hesed. It's the...
Do you know the name for that? Play on the water like that?
No, what is it, Joshua?
It's called a cat's paw.
That's very interesting.
When the wind plays with the water like that. And a cat's paw is also got another meaning. It sometimes is like a dupe or like a tool, like somebody that's like a fool or scapegoat. So maybe there's a Saturnian element there. I don't know. Anyway, sorry to interrupt. I just thought that was funny you mentioned that because I lived many years on this earth before I learned the meaning of that.
Well, and that's interesting for two reasons. Because obviously, we always say, or I always say, yeah, we've always said, even though it's been contentious among us sometimes, is that well, we'll say it's a Jyotish or a tantric way to understand, is that the dragon planet Ketu, he swallows the sun. What is his gemstone, you may ask? Well, his gemstone is a cat's eye, and he's deeply associated also with opal. So that's for me, that's always interesting, because it's like, what does the light dancing on the water appear as? And I think that's even what you're talking about when you're saying like a scapegoat. Although I wouldn't necessarily use that phrasing, I think I understood what you were meaning. And so I would say it is the appearance of effulgence, the sparkling. That's not really real. That is how we're understanding the interaction between these two things. We are seeing the heat be dispersed amongst the water. That's really what we're witnessing. But we don't, that's not how we perceive the world. And so maybe if you're very smart and very scientific, maybe that is how you perceive the world. But for me, I see the light dancing, a cat's paw, as you would say, upon the waters. So that's a great. And so where does the dialectical synthesis, or dialogical, if I'm going to use my language, but dialogical synthesis happen between Gevra and Hesed? Of course, it happens in Tiferet, which is where the light comes from, the light that we see. So Rosalind and her liberal democratic politics, which becomes more post and post-liberal with time. Very interestingly, there's your Saturnian connection, your Hesed Bena connection, Joshua. Her politics change with time, and she also ages, and she also dies. But it's a natural connection that she then has through this journey. She is a school teacher. She doesn't know anything. That's how she describes herself. She's just a school teacher. She doesn't know anything about anything. She's not a politician. She's she's salt of the earth, good people. And
hey, what did she die of, by the way?
She died of ovarian cancer in the end.
Okay, so cancer.
Or uterine cancer, excuse me, uterine cancer.
Well, Cancer is a zodiac sign, and this show's all about zodiac signs. So I don't think that's any kind of accident. And of course, ovarian or uterine, that would be like Scorpio-ish area, zodiacally speaking. So those might be some clues too to kind of keep in mind as we talk about her. But I did have one more thought real quick.
Go for it.
Because some minutes ago you were talking about the perspective of somebody looking up at the stars, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but when they are solving the prophecy puzzle, so to speak, at some point they find themselves on a planet looking up at the stars, and they realize that the tribes themselves were on these different locations around a star system, and that the 12 tribes, or the zodiac as they knew it, they didn't actually ever get to see, because it was from the perspective of their home planet, which for us is Earth, right? So imagine right now we have the zodiac, but then years from now we get chased off our planet by robots, but we preserve the zodiac thing, yet we don't know where it's at or whatever, because after all, the zodiac, as it were, is just a snapshot of stars, which are quite far apart, of course. So depending on your perspective, zodiacs, it's all a matter of perspective, I guess is what I was getting at. So what it reminded me of, though, as far as the Kabbalah is concerned, is how Hod and Netzach are wandering. The two legs, the body is wandering across space, searching for Malkuth, I think, which is where that perspective is of the night sky. And I think that might be solid in a sense, because just above Malkuth, of course, is the canopy of heaven, right? So you got your sun, moon, and stars kind of hanging out in the firmament, and that's what they're looking for, is that perspective from Malkuth, which I guess in this case is Kobol or whatever. So anyway, thanks for letting me weave on that.
No, that was... sorry, Vanessa, go for it.
No, I love Josh's perspective. the first thing he made me think of is where you are, like we're on Earth and we have the 12 zodiac, but do we? Because a lot of people think there are 13 and some 14. And so, you know, there are also people that think we were once on Mars and came to Earth and now we're going to go back to Mars. So, I mean, there's just all these thoughts based on where you are and what you're looking at. And I'm sorry, I can't remember the second thing you said I was going to comment on, but
Well, I like what you said, Vanessa. Regardless, if you forgot, you can always chime in and when you remember, and that's fully, of course, okay. I also like what Josh said, and so I was going to tell the story about the scorpion in Tibetan culture and Buddhism, obviously. But
that's it.
well, there you go. So, do you want to say what you want? I'll let
No,
you go
he
first.
said like obviously she has cancer, and he mentioned something about Scorpio and something else, and I was like, oh, leave it to a Scorpio to take cancer down, and that's what I was thinking. But you know,
I mean,
that's
that it is interesting. So, scorpion in Tibetan, we call it a dikpa. I know that'll be funny. If we're all juvenile, it's okay. We can laugh. So that also has an alternate meaning of sins. I know, interesting, right? And so, but it can also mean bad karma, and it can also mean sorcery. So all of those things actually at the same time. And so one of the ideas is that the deficient mother, so the mother of Netzach, when she's like as a Lilith kind of character, she breaks apart into 20 million pieces. Remember self-combusting star turned thunder into diamonds? Very similar idea. So it explodes, this exploding star in all her shards. But before that, well, you can say that each little shard is also light and sound. It's maybe contained within matter, of course. We, as we all are, have stars, supposedly stardust within us. Maybe that is also the Gnostic story. Maybe that is like something they seeded into the reality. I know Crystal is like thinking like, yeah, this sounds like the OA kind of. I'm like, yeah, it kind of does. But yeah, so maybe we all are stars, and you know, we are all from that point of combustion of Venus, and we all like have these little sparks of light within us that are trapped in the evil matter. I don't think that, but I know that is what people think of when they think of Gnosticism, and it's definitely not how we, I think, collectively think of Gnosticism. But of course, people can believe what they will.
Hey, may I also
go for it, Josh.
weave on something too? Because I think, and by the way, for Crystal's benefit, and again, anybody who hasn't watched it, there's movies that are kind of standalone. So if you didn't want to watch the whole series, you can kind of get a gist of the story from those. But there's another kind of spin-off series called Caprica. And if you watch a little bit of that, at least the beginning of it anyway, is like the most important part. The guy that created the Cylons, he was a scientist. And it kind of reminds me of the storyline of Terminator or whatever. But anyway, his daughter happened to be like an activist, and she was protesting against, you know, advanced technology and AI, cloning, you know, all this stuff. And of course Caprica, it's very like traditionalist, old-fashioned kind of society, I guess. But naturally, with the two shins of Capricorn, we got like the technology Aquarius side of things too, right? So I think that you see this theme throughout it, where the Cylons themselves are super advanced technology, but at the same time religious zealots and like conservative. So it's like a dichotomy of sorts that kind of projects throughout the series. And when the Cylons were created, his daughter, she dies in some type of you know, politically motivated attack, let's just put it that way. And because of his grief, he models the first Cylons after his daughter. And because she herself was a religious zealot, all the Cylons that begat after her were copies of copies, and so copies of her. And so it reminds me of some of the tropes you sometimes see in like in Resident Evil, when they the Hive AI is a cloned version of the guy's granddaughter or niece or whatever. So, it's like, well, when this happens in our reality, who will it have been a clone of, right? So there's some speculation there. Thanks for letting me talk about that.
I actually have something too.
Okay, go for it, Vanessa. Sorry about that.
No, I'm always like jumping on what Josh says. But like one day we need to have a whole show on Resident Evil. But secondly, I also have something for Crystal. If she's still around.
Yeah, she's here. I don't know if she wants to talk, but she's here.
I'm still here. I'm just listening quietly.
Okay. Well, okay. There's a very important part of the show in which the president is dying, like horribly dying, and like they put her in jail. And I guess there's a priestess who has been giving her medication, if you will, and it's called Kamala. 20 years before the actual Kamala, it starts with a C. Anyway, it's a drug called Kamala. It's a psychedelic, and it's how she starts receiving her visions of what she needs to do, how she needs to do it. They'll show her a map, and she will see the entire future on the map, and nobody else will see it. And so I was wondering if since you're an herbalist, if there's a drug, of course, psilocybin is the first thing we all think of. But what do you think of when you think of a drug that, when given to someone ceremoniously, even not even in that tone, just to keep someone from dying, yet with side effects? Is there something that we have that would be similar?
I mean, I think an argument could be made for a lot of different things, but they all act slightly differently. And I don't know what all of them do. I'm hesitant to say, like, this absolutely does this, because every experience with anything psychedelic, as you know, is very personal and based on the person. So,
True.
It could be that psilocybin does that for one person, and it could be that the next person needs, iboga or something like that. I'm sure that there's others too that have more specific uses for any given thing. I'm not very well versed in like all of the hallucinogens of the world. I mean, I know a few of them, and I know the ones that I know, and the ones that I don't, I wouldn't really mess with and tell people what they're for, because it's not my medicine. I haven't worked with it.
True. And it is fiction. I was just curious what your thoughts were.
Well, if you're interested, I do have a thought, Vanessa.
Okay.
Well, Kamala is a Sanskrit word. It means lotus. I'm not trying to... but I don't think for me, I agree with Crystal. Like, I don't like to talk about psychedelics either, like, just for me, because people will be like, oh, he's saying it as like something to do. No, I'm not saying and to do anything. Obviously, everybody use their own discernment, their own fire, Gevrotic fire, and, decide for yourself your will of what you want to do. I'm not recommending anything. But I also always thought when or even originally watched a series that they really were talking about like cannabis. Because cannabis can, there are certain cancers that it has some clinical success in reducing tumor size. But I'm not saying that it like cures anything. I'm just saying it has like anti-tumoral properties. So for me, that's how I always interpreted it. But I understand that that's not probably a great thing for people who are like, well, everybody knows I like to smoke pot on our Friday Night Lives, and Joshua obviously does, and you obviously do, and Crystal obviously does sometimes. So I know that that's not like it doesn't seem like what our experiences are would parallel hers, but I do think it's interesting because Lotus
the first one did.
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah,
the first time you did it,
of.
right? Yeah, I agree with that. The first time you smoke pot, it can be an extremely psychedelic experience. Depends on your, what kind and your level and all of that. I'm going to say Frau Blocher just put up another great comment. One of her first visions while on, we'll call it Kamala, leads to her personally meeting Leo Bin and the acceptance of her own deceptive nature. Oh, such a good point. And I know I'm a Leoben fan. I know Frau Blucher is also a Leoben fan. He is definitely one of the most interesting of the Cylons. But
Was
just
he
to,
the one that was a clone and sabotaged the ship or something?
so there was the so he kind of played an ambiguous character. Like different versions of him had sort of different understandings of the world. I think that's like because he's the first Cylon that we meet that's someone that's
Oh,
explicitly
okay.
a Cylon, right? Other than Caprica 6. Like we know Caprica 6 is a Cylon because she says she's a Cylon.
Wait,
But
just to be clear, he's the one that comes back that they imprison, and he, Starbuck is questioning him. Is this the same guy?
yes.
Okay, great. Because I did want to talk about that because he is the first person that kind of throws out like heavily, oh, you believe in the gods? And then she goes right back to the ship and pulls out her little statues of Artemis and Athena, and so anyway, okay, thank you. Thank you for
Is this
clarifying.
the guy that she throws out of the hold, like the
Yes.
airlock? So that's the vision she had, right? Is her
Well,
sending
yeah.
that guy out the
Yeah, so Rosalind sees that guy. And that interestingly, Leoben is actually one of the most mystical. He kind of is a Muad'Dib, you could say a little bit, or a prophet at least of the Cylons.
Cylons. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's like her counterpart. That's so wild. Okay.
Yeah. He
Yes.
definitely is. And he has that scorpion nature, as I was saying, like Frau Blocher is saying, deceptive nature that is
So-
best
oh,
embodied by a
dude.
scorpion.
Okay, so he is Judas, because if you read some of the apocryphal texts of Judas, he actually knew the identity of Christ. He claimed that he was from Barbello, and like the only other apostle or disciple that knew anything like that was Peter, and that's why he was given the keys. But Judas knew like maybe more than that, and he was the one then that had to betray, right? So there is some weird archetype stuff going there, maybe with Scorpio having that deep understanding of like, well, this is my lot. He has the most faith actually because he's doing the word or the will of God, and then obviously doesn't come out on the other end of it very well. And see, the thing is, I think he knows that, so which is the wild part about all this. So anyway, thanks for letting me comment.
But it's so funny that I had just commented, though, the only thing that can take down a Cancer is a Scorpio. You just reinforce that, man. Thank you.
Yeah, right.
I wanted to just say really quickly that Kamala, the Lotus, is a planet of Netzach, is a planet of Venus. It can be. It's dependent, but usually it is classified as that because what are the characteristics of a Venus plant? It is big flower, obviously, no pun, but very fragrant, obviously very ephemeral, but it can also be a thing that buds a lot, or it can be something that's a bloom is very long lasting. Those are both traits of Venus. I know people say, well, roses don't last a long time. Well, the ones that are that are cultivated for like the flower industry, but also like for rose gardens, especially in Central Asia, like think Turkey, Iran. Obviously, this is an interesting kind of metapolitical idea right now is Central Asia. So basically, so the roses that are bred for that, cultivated, which is an element or a way to open up Netzach, as is faith. You need both of those things. You also, so that is sort of the deficient mother, the mother without a womb. It is a way to amend her negative Venus. You could say that. And so the Venus, the element of Venus that is negative is the lustful, sinful, as Frau Blucher said, deceptive nature. And some people will ascribe that to be a woman, but it's interesting that the show, as I like to say, posits a sort of non-dual resolution to this paradox by positing her, equal and opposite, as Joshua said, in Leoben. So Leoben is on the saint's path. He is on the path, as with Rosalind, from Netzach to Yesod. Yesod is where the fire and the water are actually resolved. It's not necessarily where they meet for the first time, but it's where they resolve. So this is where she comes into her own will, you could say, or at least her own kind of awakening. but she also needs to know the names of things. So the best, as we were saying, you guys thought that I was just talking about Geminis because for some other reason, but I wasn't, because her priest, her personal priest is what? Is Geminis. She can read the scripture of Pythia, Gospel of Pythia. I forgot. I know it's not called a gospel, but they call it something. It's the scrolls of Pythia. There we go. It came to me finally. The scrolls of Pythia are in old Geminis, meaning that they cannot just be read by some regular old Caprica priest who's kind of an atheist, but they have to be read by a priest of Gemini. That insanely powerful Hode-like intellect. Because
Hey, and by the way, so with Gemini being the arms, do you think that with language, sometimes it's written, different directions? Is there like any elements there to consider that?
absolutely. And this is what exactly happens to Elosha, isn't it? She says, don't go down to the planet. Anytime humans return to Kobol, it is written that there will be a sacrifice required. And so, famous last words, right? So she goes down to the planet with Rosalind. They're going to the tomb of Athena. They're trying to find the sort of like this place where they were the map, the star map, right? That's the whole point, is to go to the tomb of Athena and find the way to Earth. Now they don't get there. And Frau Blucher also commented this a little earlier, is that Leoben tells Rosalind that she will find the way to Earth. And she does end up finding the way to Earth. It just isn't how she imagines it to be. She is the Netzach. She is the deficient mother. She cannot fully embody the three worlds. She can only embody the things that she knows, meaning Hode. Okay? And so partly is what makes her an interesting character is that she becomes more and more knowing of herself. But because she's knowing of herself in the lower three worlds, she's standing at Yesod, she then can only know things about herself rather than of of the higher worlds. And you're going to say, well, she's a prophet. But you see this happen in the Bible a lot. A lot of the prophets are like, why me, God? Why are you sending this message to me? I'm like a nobody. I'm like it doesn't even matter what I think. And God will be like, well, for this reason and this reason, this is like your karma. He doesn't say it like that, but like your burden, and like this is what I've chosen for you. And some accept it and some don't. And so it makes it like people always forget that, like, just because that Rosalind believes she's like on this divine mission from God, she's actually an agent of her own will. And she actually understands what her own will is to a high degree. As we find out later, when she has to make very drastic political decisions, including a possible political assassination, possible rigging of the ballots, all very prescient, sort of like very topical things, especially in like what we are calling like the post liberal sort of aeon that we're in, an aeon of decoherence.
Yeah, dude. And I was thinking that earlier because you mentioned like how old the show was. And I was thinking it's timeless because you got AI, cloning, rigging elections, coups. I mean, it's all there.
Absolutely.
It's human nature on display.
Well, interesting about AI, right? Because that's a big part. That's a big part of the episode that we talked about last week. And I think you even brought up in the chat as well about when they have to spool up the FTLs, or maybe Solar brought this up. I can't remember. Maybe Solar did. But anyways, I'm sorry. Either of you, it doesn't really, I mean, it matters, but it kind of doesn't, because it's a great point regardless. But they spool up the FTLs. They have to jump every 30 minutes. So, like, I totally forgot my point in that, but I think it's of the same thing, of the same nature. Josh, help me. What was I saying? I'm sorry about that.
Well, I could think of something that.
Okay, reply.
The jumping that just reminded me of the old Egyptian story with Atum, and when he was wielding, before he had dynamicism or strength of the right arm, he relied on the left, which was about avoiding Apep's strikes and unpredictability, prediction and unpredictability. And it was based on more like a wisdom type of thing. But then further into the story, he gets the strength of the right arm where he can simply stand toe to toe with Apep and doesn't have to dodge anything. So that's just what kind of came to mind when you said this, because in that moment they were weak, so they had to rely on strategy and jumping. And at certain times the balance of power would shift a lot in the show, where like they would take out a resurrection ship and look like, oh, they're finally getting the upper hand, But then, of course, the Cylons are always up to their shenanigans, and they don't have a moral compass so far as they don't mind killing humans. So they always got an edge there too, because that's how they get their edge, is by deception and impersonating humans and taking advantage of humans' natural tendency to want to trust and stuff like that. Anyway, go ahead.
I know this is an Athena episode, but can we talk about Boomer for a second?
Well, she is Athena, right? So it's impossible to not really talk about. We can talk about any version of the Sharon. I think that's totally fine.
Awesome. Well, no, I was just like, rewatching it. I'm looking at all of the different Sharons and the Boomers. And, because there's 13? Is it 13 of each one?
Yeah, 13 of each one.
Okay. Yeah. And so I'm looking at each one, and it's like each one of her doesn't even know. She's so confused. Like, is she one? Is she not? And that's what you were talking about in the first episode, Ark 1, why she was able to have a child in the first place, because she could experience love. I guess my point is, what are your thoughts on why she is that way? Why is she so confused? Why is she so torn?
Well, Boomer is evil, ontologically evil, as the kids say. There was something, because the other, she's devious as fuck. Like that whole model, like the 8s, they're very devious. Like the Hodes, that's basically what they are. They are the Hodes. They are the 8s. They're just extremely devious. They keep like everything at their chest. You're never sure if their true motives. This becomes very true when they go back to Kobol for the 3rd time and go to the opera house, right? They, like, we see Sharon in all she's having the shared visions. She knows they're taking her daughter Athena. It's like very much like she is the mother of Athena, right? Or Hera, excuse me, Hera. Sorry about that. Hera, I had obviously had a stroke for a second, but Hera. So she's sharing in all the experiences of the other 8s, right? But she doesn't ever tell anyone. That's part of what makes all the 8s very neurotic, is that they keep everything to their chest. They have no sense of morality, which is not necessarily bad. But if everything in the world is governed by Hode, meaning analogical mind, it's going to be very difficult to have deep relationships, right? Because the only relationship that you'll have as your primary relationship will be with yourself. But as I said, a Hode-like person needs to end up with Hesed. They need to be in the sort of the gentle, that kind of care of loving kindness, or that love to open themselves up. It can't
where
be
I feel
singularly.
most people should belong anyway.
Well, and since we're discussing Sharon, because she, has these little trysts and stuff to gain the trust of humans, can we also maybe talk a little bit about the hot blonde that wears the red dress? Because she reminds me of the Matrix chick
Caprica
too.
6.
Yes, please.
We would be remiss if we didn't discuss her.
That is correct, and I never would have thought about the Matrix. Or were you looking at the woman in the red dress?
Oh, that's right. I totally forgot about that point in the Matrix too. It's been a long time since I've seen that movie. Longer than I've watched Battlestar, much more recently than that.
Oh, wow, cue it up, man.
So Caprica 6. So she's not all Caprica 6. She has different, obviously they all have different replicas. They all have different, mildly different personalities. We talked a little bit about this last week because it was a very Cylon heavy episode. And I want to correct myself. Leo Bin I have to credit Frau Blucher for this, but Leoben tells Starbuck, meaning Kara Thrace, that she will find Earth. I said he tells President Roslin. I think President Roslin does actually hear something like that from a Leoben. But I don't think he's talking about Roslin, and I don't even think he's necessarily talking to Roslin. I think it's her misinterpretation, which is very Netzach-like. And there is an idea in Hebrew Kabbalah that there's like a veil, like a husk that is always over Netzach. It's the only Sephra that has a husk over it. And so the husk isn't necessarily considered bad, and it's not even considered necessarily a klipa. It just is there. So like how ice can look blue or green, I would say that is what that's also referring to. So anyways,
so you said the first episode was all about the Cylons. So is it fair to say that was the nuts and bolts?
Ching. Yeah, definitely. I think that is accurate. Josh. And yeah, it was a very Cylon heavy. We talked about like the agency of the different Cylons and the numbers of the different Cylons. But what I think is interesting to discuss Caprica 6 is that she is very Tiferatic. And she appears as a very luciferic force, and I think that is kind of how she aesthetically appears.
Yeah. And she gives knowledge to Gaius, right?
That's the whole thing, right? So we have to then also talk about Gaius Baltar. As I and Frau Blucher also believe, he is the real villain. I know you'll be like, the Cylons who holocausted humanity aren't the villains. No. Gaius Baltar is the real villain.
Yeah, he betrays them by giving them the security codes to the defense network or something like that.
So much more.
He opened the gates, right?
And he also opens the gates for the Cylons to die. I mean, he has he's not even moored in loyalty or unloyalty. It's not even conceptually relevant when discussing his character.
Well, and
he fakes people out on like who is a Cylon and who is not based on his quote test on who is a Cylon. I mean, he's all over the place.
Well, and one other parallel that might be here, I haven't really watched a lot of the Planet of the Apes stuff, but isn't the ape that basically is a turncoat in that movie or conspires with the humans, isn't his name also Gaius? So maybe there's a weird parallel here to be drawn between the two.
I like it.
I just want to shout out Crystal really quick. She just dipped in Ranch, obviously. Her phone was dying. Thank you so much, Crystal. We really appreciate you being
dipped
here.
In Ranch.
Yeah, of course. And so everybody can check out Crystal's book. I'll pop it in the link for when this airs as when I re-upload it to the stream. Maybe not in the live. I'll put it in the live later, but I'll when I do the upload, I'll add her book in as well as Vanessa Etsy.
But if I can add, if you don't check out her book, just look at her knowledge in general, because her knowledge of Chinese herbalism is phenomenal. She is helping me with my disease, and I have become 1,000% better since. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
No, that's really great. I'm really glad about that, to hear that. I honestly had no idea. And Crystal and I talk like almost every other day. So it's funny. I literally no idea. So I'm really happy to hear that. Yeah, Crystal's great. She's really great. I'm glad she finally started responding to my messages, my thirsty DMs, being like, come on my show. And she's probably like, who is this person? Anyways, so that's basically it. So yeah, okay, so Netzach, Kamala, we're making the way up. We're going to this Luciferic force of the Caprica 6. We actually find out Caprica 6 cannot have children of her own, interestingly enough. So we were talking about Roslin as the incomplete mother, the mother without a womb, which is the characteristic or the archetype of Netzach. Then it's not necessarily of Netzach, because Netzach can also be a mother. So she can also obviously be Lambodara in the sense that she can give birth to humans. Like Joshua was saying, the civilians are very much governed by Netzach. But it's also can be embodied by this archetype who is wombless. So she can't necessarily generate into the future, meaning self-generate, autogenesis, or whatever. I'm using the wrong word, but people understand what I mean.
Palingenesis. If you're creating life from yourself, I think is the
Or parthenogenesis.
yeah, something like that.
Which I thought
Right.
was fascinating because we talked about this in chat today. She is the, when they are on Caprica and Starbuck is there and they are trying to impregnate her with, a Cylon child. When Starbuck comes to, she realizes what's happening. She's like walking around the hospital and she finds out, guess who's in charge? Caprica 6. So, I mean, it totally makes sense. And Caprica 6 is jealous the whole time. This love that is happening between all these other people and the Cylons, like Boomer. So, sorry, that was it.
No, I mean you're totally right. I think that the one thing is that we don't want to, like, for NetSoc, for the positionality of NetSoc, we don't want to conflate faith and love. It's not the same, right? Like when we're talking about faith to open NetSoc, to open the path of the saint, we want to focus actually on the connection between Binah and NetSoc. So because Binah is really, we're using Binah, or we're using faith to open NetSoc, but we are concretizing NetSoc into reality. That's really what that relationship is about. So Saturn as the archetype is, obviously we said Adama, but he has a Gevratic core also, like a warlike core. And this is the part of NetSoc that she's attracted to, but she's not necessarily attracted to him as a personality. It's recognizing part of him and then being like, okay, I like this part, but maybe I hate this other part.
I almost think it's kind of a daddy issue in the fact that she sees it in she sees him and the commander and the things that she adores, and that's why I'll leave it at that.
No, because what happens is that their friendship and their relationship, although it doesn't necessarily manifest it takes like 5 seasons or 4 seasons, 4.5 seasons. Their friendship and their relationship manifests very slowly, very Saturnian, right? And how does it manifest? She actually goes into his quarters and she's yelling at him, and he's kind of yelling at her back. Because he has a temper too, like Gevratic, right? So they're kind of going at each other, and then she notices like he has all these old classics, like not just the normie classics, but like all these books she hasn't even read. And she considers herself like very cosmopolitan, very well read. Like she's a snob. She's a total snob. And she sees in him at that moment through text. So through the actual Binah, the black ink on the white pages, like I always say, that is Binah. She sees in him this other side, this other facet, and she recognizes it of herself, and also that he is slightly greater in his knowledge, or I will use the proper Kabbalah. He's greater in his understanding of the world. But she also hates his conclusions a lot of times. But they can bond, Venus and Saturn, or Binah and NetSoc, they can bond over these things of beauty, which is also a way to understand Eros, or one of the densities of love.
And
so it's
also,
not inherently romantic love, although it develops later on. But it's the love of beauty, Tiferet, because that is also where the relationship between Binah and NetSoc is governed. Is that Tiferet? I'm so sorry, Josh. Please go ahead. I didn't mean to. I just wanted to finish my thought because I know I wouldn't remember. I apologize.
Oh, it's cool, dude. I just never know really where to cut in. So the one other thing I had mentioned is like the balance of power between them too. There's times not just when characters switch sides, like his son, for instance, is the admiral's own son kind of sides with the civilians at some point, right? But also there's a time when they kind of declare martial law, in which case the Gavaratic energy or NetSac kind of takes over the entire fleet, not just their one military side. And so then the laws began to change and the protocols began to change, right? So there's somewhat of a Saturnian element there, I guess, as well, like in times of emergency or severity. So certain things are allowed to flourish when it's peacetime, but then there's like a lockdown mode as well. And that dynamic is sometimes on display in the show, but it's a lot of times it's just because like Cylons have infiltrated and trust is an issue, or there's sabotage, or they're, in active hot war or whatever. Anyway, thank you.
No, you're absolutely. Sorry about that. I muted myself. You're absolutely right. There's like I say, the series is very much focused on this idea of like, I'll call it my language, like Aeon of the Daughter. It is Tiferet and Yesod. It is like the Leodama, although later on he becomes a lot more Hasidic. He actually loses his Tiferatic quality, and he becomes Hasidic, and he actually becomes kind of an Artard, to be honest. But anyways, we won't get into that.
After he's shot in the heart, so to speak, that change takes place?
Shit, yes.
So maybe that Saturnian influence has an effect.
Oh, that would
like
make sense.
Benad a Tippereth path or something, maybe.
Okay, so that's what it would be, but it would be the Bina to Tiferet path descending onto Tiferet, shooting him in the heart, which is also Tiferet. But he leans into his lawyerly nature, his libtard nature. So he goes to Hesed. That's really what happens. He goes to Jupiter because he's trying to be expansive in the world. But the problem with Lee is he never conquered Tiferet, in my opinion. He never was able to overcome, at least how we see him on the show. He was never able to overcome not only the love for himself, but the love for Kara Thrace. Because she's also Tiferatic, right? So in a way, she represents him in a way.
No.
Yeah, like his younger years when he was maybe in war college or something and had a lot of pep, something like that.
Yeah.
No, I like this talk about him being Tipperatic, because it's like the way of the arrow, right? I mean, in other reasons we can talk about that, but the way of the arrow, I mean, aren't we all trying to just use that? But no, we have to go around it and do all these other things. And Hesed is one of the most important things that we all need to work through. And so, I don't know, man.
Wasn't his son's nickname Apollo?
Well, that's his call sign, right?
Yeah. So there's probably a parallel there, I'm sure.
Well, yeah, and we did talk about this last week quite a bit. So, Apollo has multiple qualities as per both Solar and Eros. They talked a lot more about this than I did and were much more capable of discussing it than I was. But they basically just explain like he's got all these qualities, he has all these octaves, he has different names for different forms, different ideas. And so that is also very Hasidic, right? Because it is like the example I gave at the beginning of the light flashing across the ocean. The light appears in multiple array, right? So the different arrays, it's just one beam. It's just a singular beam. There is no difference. It's just like, it's like invisible. We can't see it, but it's shining upon the water. And then it looks like 20 million little dancing fairies. And so that is also, you can also say that is also the ego when it is at Tiferet. It's kind of seeing all these like particles of yourself, parts of who you are, maybe even your own reflection. Maybe do you like that person? Do you not like that person? Do you want to choose a different one? That's a very Hasidic too.
Well, I would also add that there's elements of this that kind of, I don't know how much Mormonism parallels end times Christianity, but when you are familiar with like the Revelation or texts, it kind of talks about the 12 tribes reuniting. And of course, if you do research about that, each tribe it's kind of analogous with a zodiac sign. And so this story that we find in Battlestar Galactica sometimes reminds me of, some of those elements that we see in like Judeo-Christian.
No, it's the same.
folklore. Yeah.
It's exactly the same. Like the Mormon story and the like early Christian story, it's exactly the same. They just choose different people to be the tribes. Like they say, okay, the American Indians of these ethno-linguistic groups are one of the lost tribes. And then they'll say like, Asians aren't part of the tribe, aren't any of the tribes. And then you'll say that about black people, but now that they've sort of retconned them back in. And like they don't consider everyone else, like it's not just everyone in the worlds. It's like select, like that's why Mormons are so obsessed with genealogy, right? It's all about like finding who they think are the descendants of the tribes. They legit believe it. That's why this is such an interesting series, because it's talking about something that is biblical, but it's talking about also something that we talk about, which is metamagic and metafiction. It literally is reinterpreting the Old Testament story. And it's applying them to this sort of, well, this series is not that Mormon. The original series is. This series is a lot more like, if you want to call it theosophical, this is a lot more theosophical. It's drawing from a lot more ideas. It's not limiting itself to Mormonism.
May I ask Josh a question?
Yeah, of course. Go for it.
Like I said, I mean, I mentioned earlier, Josh, that you were like so well read in the scripture. It blows my mind sometimes. But like, do you think that, I mean, I'm rewatching it again. I haven't watched it in 20 years. So, I have like one season left. But do you think that like the Cylons or the humans are more on the side of Christianity at any point in the show?
Well, the Cylons are actually more religious, I think, in terms of their dogmatic belief in scripture or whatever, because it's part of their code. So they're almost like, if you think about it, they probably operate more like an angel than a human would. So they have like unwavering loyalty to God, even though they don't even really know what God is, because for them, it's just really God to them is whatever God to the Caprica chick, on Caprica that they are all modeled after, that's God to them, right? So it's kind of relative in a sense, but because of this rubric they have and how they judge people and the humans over time, humans began to err and diverge from the path, so to speak, so much so that Cylons began, I think, to have kind of a distaste for them and began to kind of resent them, because it's like, well, how are you guys the chosen people? You're disobedient. You don't obey God. You're sinful and you're destroying yourselves. And they're like, why can't we be the chosen ones? We're perfect and we obey, So it's kind of, you almost end up feeling bad for the Cylons in a way, because we have a chosen people here in our timeline to kind of contrast against that too, I think. So I think that, again, it's such a timeless series when you really think about it, but that's the whole grand drama of it, right? So
yeah, very true. It's very much back and forth. I mean, you like you said, they're programmed in this way to believe how humans originally believed. They've grown so much that now they believe this, and it's just I don't know, just such an excellent series. Sorry.
No, don't be sorry. I wanted to say this. Frau Blocher just sent me a screenshot of the series when Gaius is talking to Boomer in his little laboratory where he has the uranium test, right? That's the whole idea. He has to use this uranium to sort of test whether people are Cylons or humans. And so as Frau Blocher told me, and I remember this, like I can remember it very easily in my memory, Caprica 6 is telling Gaius, Gaius, she's doing that thing that she does where she kind of winds him up, and she's like, you have to tell her that she's a human or she's gonna kill you right now. Like, she even says that. And so he freaks out and he goes, well, you can't really see, like, Sharon can't really see him freaking out, like in the same way that we see him freaking out in that kind of mind palace state. But she is looking at him, Sharon is, and she's like looking at him and seeing whether like what he's doing, and he appears a little erratic, but he's not like totally out there necessarily. But then he tells her, you're 100% human and very bright green. Well, that's really interesting because uranium glass is obviously bright green. If you think about it, green is obviously, we talked about this, or I did at least at the very beginning, about Hode and Netzach. The green of Netzach, as I was trying to get to, maybe it didn't make this point right away, but the green of Netzach is more like jade. It's self-luminous. Remember I said there's a husk over Netzach? Well, this would actually make sense if the inner core of Netzach is like this luminous being, this luminousness, this masslessness and luminousness. It would sort of illuminate and then be contained within the husk. So the husk itself would appear as illuminate, as illuminated, and this is exactly how Hebrew Kabbalah, the post like Lurianic and post-Lurianic Hebrew Kabbalah describes it. So I always thought that was really interesting. But so he's basically, but you can also think of Netzach as having the quality of the dragon, Rahu Ketu. Remember, he's a perennial figure for the space, and not because we're necessarily Setians or anything like that, but maybe we are. Who knows? Maybe one of us is only, but who knows? The Rahu Ketu is normally down here with us, meaning that he swims between Mercury, Bud, or Hode, and he also swims between Netzach or Shukra or Venus. He's swimming in a figure 8. Remember, Sharon is the 8. That's the whole idea. He is saying, I know we said uranium, I know that's a joke, but he is really saying that Sharon is the dragon. She is the 8. And in fact, if you listen to the way I do the Kabbalah, I always say like Keter can be both Uranus, or it can be understood as Rahu.
So she's actually red, right? Because his device would have had a red or a green light, right? Because I was thinking about it, I was like, what the hell did he mean by your bright green? So I was like, oh, he must have had a light on there. And so even though she's red, he says to her, you're green. And that brought me back in my mind back to our rose conversation earlier.
Yes. He's telling her she is like the mass. That's what it is. It's the red and the green together. It's the interaction, but it's really not. He tells her, you're a dragon. That's basically what it is. He's deceiving her, but he's actually revealing to her at the same time.
Rose of Sharon.
He's revealing to her her true nature, which is a dragon. But he lets her pretend. He lets her be Netzach. That's what the husk is. It's the pretense of what makes her happy at that moment.
I literally just watched that episode, and I didn't see it kind of in the same way as Gaius was being pushed by 6. I mean, yes, he's always being pushed by 6, but I don't know.
Well, she had grand plans, for that particular, because she needed an ace in the hole, right? So they were combing the ships for all the Cylons, and so I mean, she needed.
And Sharon sets the bombs, right? That's the whole point of it.
Yeah.
So, like Caprica 6, like Josh is saying, I'm sorry, Josh, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but yeah, Caprica 6 has plans, and so she needs to instrumentalize Gaius to make those plans happen. That's what makes her manipulative. It's not that she inherently, I mean, she does do that too. She inherently lies, but she is a Luciferic force. She believes she is telling the truth.
Now, doesn't
she's telling her truth.
She uses sex to control him too, right?
Yeah.
Like, she's imaginary
he's weak
or whatever.
to it, right?
Or she is the
That's-
woman in red.
Yeah.
Yes,
The whore and the beast and all that.
correct. But Gaius is not the beast, and he
The
never
ninth
is.
gate?
Sorry, Vanessa, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I just said the ninth gate. The whore and
Dude, I was
you
thinking
gotta-
that, but I was like, I can't think of the Venus connection. But yeah, that's what was in my head.
Sorry.
It's talking about it, yeah.
No, I mean, that is true. I mean, that's then where's the ninth gate? Well, the ninth gate is at Yesod. It's at the moon. So, I mean, it all makes sense, right? Because that's where the Kundalini, I'm using air quotes, but the Kundalini experience is happening, right? Is at Yesod.
You gotta
It's
ride the
purely
beast.
based in feelings, like purely based in vibes. It's not really feelings, and it's more emotions. It's
Well,
more.
speaking of emotion, isn't she a copy of the second in command's wife or something like that? And she is a bundle of emotion, and so much so
she's a
that
shit
they're
show.
total
Ellen Ty, yeah.
Yeah.
You
And
talking about the XO's wife?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, she's a shit show.
But then the copy is like totally resting bitch face, pure analytical psycho, no emotion at all, you know. So it's almost like she got no emotion in the copy, and the other version had all the emotion.
But Caprica 6 is an interesting character because she is very dynamic. Like I'm saying, like she's like a lying bitch and she uses sex to get what she wants, like all true. But she also is something else. She is one of the more she's the most spiritually inclined.
Yeah, exactly. She's
It's
like
superficial. It's very new agey, but she goes very hardcore. Like last week we said the Cylon religion was kind of like a monotheistic, is like a sort of Sufism at times, or maybe like evangelical or charismatic Christianity at other times, because it is deeply monotheistic, right? But in particular, Caprica 6 and all those 6 models, which are called the sixes, they tend to take on a very new age spirituality. And I don't mean new age in the sense of like the substance of their beliefs, but rather the way that they believe them. They don't really have deep conviction. They will say if you question them and they believe that they have, but they actually don't. It's actually quite weak. Because she's more liable to change than anyone else, which is also a dragon quality. Like I think both of you were kind of saying this. Like there's like this very like the woman and the dragon. Who is riding who? Does the beast ride the dragon? Or does the beast ride the woman in red? Or does the woman in red ride the beast? This is a common question in both old and new esoterica.
I'm
Who is
nodding
in
my head
control?
erotically. That is the question, sir.
So basically,
and also Caprica being number 6 in this case made me think of how carbon has 6.
right.
What is it? Neutrons, protons, and electrons.
It's also Tiferatic, right? So maybe Ron Moore, the writer's room, was mapping them onto the Sephira because that matches perfectly. Sharon matches perfectly as an 8, right? And as I said, a couple, I don't know, like 30 minutes ago, an hour ago, Ketu and Rahu is at the moon sometimes, and Ketu is at the sun sometimes. So even though I'm saying like, yeah, there's this constant reality where he's there, he is there, but maybe he's not where we understand him or perceive him to be. Maybe he is more between the sun and moon, and his shadow is cast onto the planets. That's one way to understand it. So what I'm saying is like she's Tiferatic, but the beast is there with her. Sharon Valeri is very Yesodic because she's a fucking mess. And she's also the dragon. She's literally the Ketu. She is something, meaning that she is there in material body. She is also a Cylon, meaning he is also a dragon, meaning he is also of materiality, of matter. But the lie is that she believes herself to be a human, but she's a Cylon. Ketu believes himself to be a spirit, but he's a dragon. So what I'm saying is there's this very draconic nature between the two. And the dragon wants to rise up like the arrow, or like a chariot, or like a velocity, or like the vector, or like love. There are 17 different ways to translate the word Vega into English from the Buddhist Sanskrit. And there's a reason for that, because there are multiple ways to travel up to Keter or to Dath, depending on your system. So
I
the
had
whole, sorry, Vanessa, go ahead.
no, I had mentioned the way of the arrow earlier, but tonight has seemed to be highly tiferatic in your mind. Would you like to summarize like why you think everything we've talked about tonight is tiferatic?
Well, Cupid's arrow, man.
Well,
Arrow.
I think this will be an interesting answer. It's not necessarily the only one. Maybe we'll get there. Maybe I'll explain it better. But I think to directly answer your question, I think it's because Rosalind and Adama, like, yes, I said Adama has Saturnian qualities, but you could also say conversely, he's Geveratic with Bina qualities. You could also say that. Just like you
Okay.
could say Rosalind can never ascend past Hesed. Right? Like liberal democracy has its limits. Military dictatorship has its limits. You could easily break it into those two polarities. Those two polarities must meet in Tiferet. Through their meeting, through their synthesis, they can either go up or they can go down. We know that both things happen because the excess portion of water and fire falls down to Yesod. The sort of the exaltation of the elements meeting the air carries forth, as I was saying at the very, very beginning, what is the invisible matter in space while we are on Earth? It is air. So that is the dragon is the uprising force to Keter. That's why I say Rahu can also be understood as reaching an apotheosis at Keter. Just like his tail, Ketu, can be said to be at Hokmah or Neptune. Because it makes sense, actually. He starts at the bottom and he rises to the top. Path of the dragon, path of the lightning strike. Both at the same time. Rahu is not different from Ketu. Ketu is not distinct from Rahu. It is matter and spirit together. So that's what makes it tiferatic, is the whole show is about equal and opposite polarities. Man and woman, president of the 12 colonies versus the admiral of the galactic fleet or the colonial fleet. It's these polarities that make the show work. And it is like consistently not like it's consistently referring to Apollo, Starbuck, right? It's like like Santa Claus, a cart, a chariot. That's one way to understand Vega. Starbuck is also the best pilot in the fleet. They look like arrows. Their ship actually looks like arrows. And so next week will be more about this deeper mythology of the arrow, which is why I try not to touch it too much. But I appreciate that it was brought up because it is like such an important concept, because it is the force from Tiferet, from the interaction, from the alchemical synthesis, from bringing all of those things together. That is what allows the upasaka, the practitioner, the Kabbalist, the magician, the sorcerer, whatever you want to call it, the skywife. That is what allows her to go forth, the goldening, the citronitis. That is what allows her to go forth into the higher and supernal worlds, or him.
May I?
Is that tiferatic power? Sorry, Josh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Vanessa.
Oh no, I just wanted to say thank you so much. I feel like I brought up the way of the arrow a couple of times, and I always want you to explain things and bring them down to a level to where an idiot like me can understand. And so I thank you for explaining the Tippereth part that we've been talking about all night in a very simple way. And yeah, just thank you for that. And go ahead, Josh.
So I would, not that I feel strongly about the Cupid thing. It's just it kind of fit really nice with this little talk we're having. So if you look at all of the different relationships in Battlestar Galactica, if you can, for a moment, imagine that none of those actually exist. So what if Sharon and the engineer guy, Chief, I think his name is, that was like one of the first ones. You know, Starbuck and Apollo weren't having a thing. If the Rosalind and Adama didn't have a thing, you know. So these, and then when you think of the Arrow as like an axial mechanism here, the two are kind of interrelated in that way, where whatever relationship exists between them creates this tension that helps to move the story along, you know, because it's a long series after all. So I think these all act as kind of like wheels, to borrow more axial language. The arrows themselves create like a wheel, I think, that kind of helps you drive the story forward. And so maybe the Arrow too, you know, you got the martial qualities of the arrowhead and the feathers that provide stability, and then the shaft itself is kind of like the Hode component, right? So it's like you kind of need them both to and then one more thing I was thinking of, maybe I don't know if the show goes this deep, but maybe it does. So we got Sagittarius with the bow shooting arrows, but then Taurus has the bullseye. So if we look at where some of these characters are actually from, like maybe one's from Taurus and the other's from Sagittarion or whatever. So that could be another level to look at. Thanks.
No, that's a great point. Well, it is interesting because President Adama's family is from Toralon or Toron. I can't remember. It's one of those.
Well, no shit. All right, cool.
Right. So they are like the Sicilian mafia. That's the whole idea. So they come from this agricultural planet that is very much like Italy. They grow like wheat and all of those kinds of things. And they have a very extensive mob system, is basically what it is, very much like Italy. So that is what the kind of family he comes from, and those are the people he comes from. But they eventually emigrate to Caprica because Caprica is the most cosmopolitan of all the colonies. It is where everything happens. It's the seat of financial and sort of political, and it's a seat of where everything is happening. It's kind of like a London or a New York or a Tokyo or a Shanghai.
I never would have thought of that, actually. Them being the mob bosses of it all. But honestly, I can't wait. I really hope that Eros is with us next week so that she can bring the Greek aspect into it, because it's so heavy.
It's
And
so heavy.
she brought so much in last week. And yeah, I really hope she comes next time so that we can get into that more.
Yeah, that'll be cool. I hope she does come. Well, she loves, you know, like she was really into doing the series. Josh was really into doing the series. Solar was really into doing the series. And so, and obviously I've been wanting to do it for years. So it culminated right at the right time. So I hope everybody comes, but you know what? That's the whole thing of, we've always been like that. We've been like we're very flexible in that way, because it's not to be a burden. It's to hang out with each other, have metaphysical dialogue, be in conversation and sort of like look at Kabbalah, look at astrology, look at these archetypes of the things, look at the mythologies, look at the meta mythologies, and of course, read the inner Gnostic layer that ties together the whole thread of reality. And so in a public way, which is kind of scary at times, but we do our best to synthesize and rectify as we go. So that is basically the show in in a nutshell, is that, like, or in a matryoshka, in a seven, the 7 or a 5 layer doll, is that it's like we are a core group, but like I have my own ideas of like where I'm gonna go one day, and we'll do something else or whatever. So I'm synthesizing everything that's happening. So I can't expect anyone else to be like, oh yeah, I'm committed to 100% to Jin's crazy ideas at all times. It's not fair to them. I just had to learn that. But so it is a mixed bag in terms of hosts. I do agree that Eros and Solar both brought incredible, like, Hellenic, Greek, and like precision questions, of course. But and I hope that they both come back next week. But I do want to say, like, I think it can also be understood from a Kabbalistic layer. I think this is a big mistake of a lot of, like, contemporary paganism, contemporary heathenry. Like, I don't believe in any of those things. Don't at me. But I'm just saying that I think it's a big mistake. I think if you learn Kabbalah properly, like you don't even have to agree with me. You don't even have to follow my exact way. But I think if you learn it, you will actually realize that a lot of the things that are talked about for what is a quote unquote air quotes deity are actually like these higher Sephirotic, noetic, non-dual experiences. It's the archetype. It's not necessarily the goal. You're just seeing the husk. You want to push past the husk. So that is what I would kind of end on for me, and just in terms of what you're going to get when you come to Plus Ultra presents the Grey Lodge, the Lords of Kobol, Grey Gnostic Edition, the Tomb of Athena. Basically, that's Ark II. So that's basically what you're going to get when you come to part 3. And if we have to make a part 4 and a part 5, I never do anything in 4s because that's bad luck in Chinese. But if we have to do that, that's fine. I want to just cover the series in its totality and discuss like all the metaphysically important things. And I'll do it through Kabbalah or through tantric astrology, and everybody else will use their hermeneutic to understand. But again, it is a very theosophical series. It has a lot of facets, and I think it can be explored through multiple angles. And I think I think it's cool that we come together and do this. So I hope we did a good job for all the, BSG fans out there. We'll go for another 8 minutes, but yeah, I just want to say thank you guys. Really fun tonight. Like the whole series has been really fun. Apophenion, although it was contentious at a couple moments, it was a great series. People have given me really good feedback for it. Book club continues. This series continues. Our Southeast Asia series is continuing. Our Speculative Anthropologies of the Americas is starting. And Michael Hudson is also starting very soon. So everybody can stay tuned for that. And I hope you all will join me for that. And if anyone from the lodge is listening, you are welcome to come up. If you want a podcast, come up. This is a great way to do it. We're nice. We're a good crew. We get along. This is how I started. This is how all of us started, really. This is a great forum. And if you're interested in one of the topics that we are doing, you don't have to feel like you know that much. It's okay. I am willing to compromise and say, I go hardcore with the K-ball, hardcore with the Tantra. But I realize that everybody's at a different stage of their own marga. So it's useful to bring those things back down to reality. Like Joshua was saying with the arrow, the Samek of the Cupid, well, the Seraphim also wield an arrow, interestingly. So, that being said, thank you guys so much. I want both of you to plug, and if there's any empty space at the end, I will fill it for sure. But for the end, I want Joshua, plug yourself and your Twitter, then Vanessa, plug yourself and the store, and then I'll plug myself. Thank you.
Thank you so much for hosting. And this is one of my favorite series, like I said, so it gives me great pleasure to discuss this. And why I enjoy this especially is because of the synthesis. So because I would not have come to a lot of these conclusions had I not had this conversation. So I do need to go back and listen to the first one, however, because I didn't have an opportunity to do that yet. And regrettably, I won't be here for next week. So if there is a additional installments, I'll be sure to participate on those. But I feel like we've probably done the series justice, because if the first one's anything like this one, I'd say we're hitting all the nuts and bolts. and just for disclaimer's sake, if Cylons are on the horizon, I'm not an anti-tech extremist, and I guess I'll have to start not saying clanker as often. I don't know, maybe. Anyway, thanks so much. And I guess ask yourself this question: are you a replican or a replicant? Thank you so much.
Thanks, Josh. That was really great. Good dad joke right at the end. Yeah, I mean, I think that's like, look, reality is the story that you believe it to be. What story do you believe? What is your will? Do you know what that is? I think most people don't know what that is. So figure that the fuck out and we're all figuring it out. I'm not saying it from a, white or gray horse. I am just simply saying that we are all in the process of that. We are all in the process of the Marga, so we must let it unflower before us. And speaking of that, why not? I'll pass the mic over to Vanessa Truth and Dyes, who astro electedly sometimes tie-dyes her clothing, and which is much like a flower or a firework. So, Vanessa, please plug yourself and your show, or your show, excuse me, your shop.
It is much like a flower and a firework. But thank you so much, Jen. I am so grateful to be a part of this. I never in a million years would have imagined that I'd be podcasting. So, like Jen said earlier, if you have anything to add, just join because it can't hurt. If you want to find me, I'm on all the socials, Insta, Facebook, X, and you can find me at truthanddyes.etsy.com if you want to buy something directly. I also do astro elected stuff with which Josh and Jen both know I've done for them. But yeah, so thank you so much for having me, and I can't wait to be on the next.
And I'll just say that if I had remembered to put on one of my shirts today, Friday would have been my green tie-dye. Green's the color I associate with Friday, so I don't know if that's a coincidence. But anyway, thank you so much for making those shirts again.
Oh, anytime. And I did every single one. 7 days of Josh's Astro Elected by the hour t-shirts. So, anyway, thank you, Jen.
Oh,
thank you, Josh. This has been great, and I can't wait for the next.
Well, thank you both. And so I think it'll be an interesting note and this 1 minute, and I can't remember. I can't do the math. Anyways, I have 2 minutes basically. So American money is green. Joshua brought up green. Obviously, green has been the perennial color for this episode. I did not use green. I actually used, if you look at not the poster that I have posted, but the actual poster, which will be the cover card for this episode. This is just my fun art that I did for promo or whatever. But the actual art is Athena, it's Starbuck. Excuse me, it's Starbuck sitting in Viper. Which is also interesting, and we didn't even discuss. Well, I should have brought it up. Is a viper and a dragon? There's a similarity there, right? So, but basically, it looks like the path working between Binah and Tiferet. If you want to really be like tell all my secrets kind of thing, the path working for the cover card is Binah and Tiferet. Binah and Tiferet. So it's like a golden and a black. Basically, American money is green probably because of the preference for Netzach. Obviously, the eternity, the Fed, the institution that keeps the institution alive forever, right? Green money. It's like the garden, you're planting it. It's like there are green bills here where I live, but in general, they're multicolored. So you can see they're drawing on different ideas. But in the US, it's unique because all of your money is uniform, which is obviously, like, again, what Joshua brought up. It's partly of the mass of Hode, but it's partly of the garden. It's partly of the civilians. So, it has there's a humanistic quality to it. But the problem, the klipa, you could say, of those two, Sephira, Hode, and Netzach, is that you don't necessarily look higher because you don't think that there is a higher place. There's more than words to learn, and there's also more than money to make. Those are the klipas of Hode and Netzach, really. So remember to resolve and synthesize both, but there is a higher world, or multiple higher worlds. So understand that how you will, how you want. Okay, so I'm Jin the Ninja, at Wukong Reborn, at Threshold Saints. Follow the show, like and subscribe. Awesome show, guys. I'm going to close it right at the magic number. Peace out.